This is your host, Milos speaking. Welcome to another week in the crazy world of Serbian football, and we have a lot of things to talk about this week. Joined today by a couple special guests like every week. First up, we got Luca from Washington, D.C. Luca, how are you feeling today?
Extremely confused, man.
Yeah, I hear you on that one. Very, very confused. We're bipolar as ever, of course. Belly, how's things in Adelaide?
Gentlemen, we're actually in lockdown. We reported 2 cases of coronavirus yesterday, so they're locked down the state of 1.2 million people. And I recently saw a Serbian T-shirt, and it had the quote on it: "Imali smo veće problema, pa nismo rešili." So I thought to myself, can that be the answer for every single question I ever get put about Serbian football?
That's right. Alexa, how's Belgrade tonight? The streets are wild, I'm sure, because we just avoided
Oh, yeah. There's the scenes in Vranja right now are incredible. You would be shocked to see. No, in all seriousness, it's a rainy night, but tonight it went well. I want to give some credit to Veli for the Alan Ford reference, and to anyone that happens to be listening to this that's in Belgrade right now, the 50 years of Alan Ford being out, there's a nice little gallery up there in the National Museum, so I highly suggest you check it out. And that's one of the many great sentences and references from that wonderful comic. So just a shout out to the best comic that's ever been made. But yeah, I'm confused as hell tonight.
Yeah, let's talk about it. So we have a lot to talk about since the last show we filmed the last show we did was right after the Scotland game. We were all depressed, and then we had 2 games since against Hungary and then Russia today. Hungary we drew, and then today we battered and destroyed Russia, which is a much better team than anybody we played recently. 5-0 somehow, and yeah, none of this makes sense. Nothing ever makes sense with this team. Luca, well, what are your thoughts on today's game? What's going on?
Yeah, man, it's just a very, very bizarre. I was having a chat with my cousin from New York City while we were watching the game, and I told him, I was like, this is hands down the most frustrating team to support. Even though, I follow other sports teams and everything, but the Serbian national team is hands down the most frustrating team to support. You never know what you're going to get. And yeah, this game against Russia just proved it, man. As a quick aside, also, man, I don't know how you guys feel about this. This is just a little been bugging me ever since I've seen it. But the players who have a white shirt under their Serbian national team jersey, can they freaking tuck that thing in? It looks horrible. It looks very sloppy, man. Like Spajic and Radonjic and stuff. Extremely sloppy, dude. But that aside, man, obviously a great game. Seems like the no pressure really helped us as usual, but we can't be that team that just plays well when there's no pressure. You got to show up all the time. Mladenovic Jovic, that connection, I think is here to stay for the national team. That was awesome. I saw some great body language from Jovic finally after he's been in goal scoring form for Serbia. Even though Mitrovic didn't score, I thought he played well. I thought he was a good captain today. And yeah, man, I'm not sure what else to say besides that. The Scotland game now hurts even more after that performance. It really does.
Of course.
And like I was telling you guys, it's not, the pain is really not going to set in until the Euros come around, and then we're trying to find Serbia on the TV, and they're not there. So that's when the pain of the Scotland loss will really come in. This was just a reminder of how bad it's going to hurt when that time does come.
Today was the most Serbia performance ever, really. I mean, this is such vintage stuff. We see the big disappointing game, and then in a game that doesn't, well, it mattered because we were trying to avoid relegation, but it didn't really matter because who cares, Nations League. But, I mean, it's just so frustrating when we're so Jekyll and Hyde, we're so bipolar. It's really ridiculous. I mean, if you see the pressing, the energy, the urgency in the game today, compare that to the game on last Thursday, it's just night and day, and it doesn't make any sense. And Russia didn't put out some, like D team or some bench warmer squad. They actually needed this game because they're trying to stay in pot 2. So this was a legitimate competitive game, and we trashed them. We played one of our better games in years, one of our best games in years, our best first half maybe ever. one of our best performances against a good team in 20 years. And it was in a game that didn't mean all that much, which is really sad and really depressing. But, we're used to it by now. This is nothing new for us. And it's just all the more frustrating now. You see Scotland, they dropped 2 games since they beat us, and we've battered a team that's, let's be honest, quality-wise, they're a whole level above Scotland, and they've shown that many times, which just adds on to everything that is horrible currently. Veli, let's hear it, man. What are your thoughts?
Really hollow. It's a really, really hollow feeling. Okay, first of all, 5 really well-taken goals this morning. I think that's a part that we can't go. They were really well-taken goals. They were really well-constructed. Again, I've used this word previously on the pod. It was efficient. Today was really efficient. The ball moved quickly. The players moved quickly. Our transition was really, really good, which was absolutely missing in the Scotland game. Like we played like we were didn't get out of first gear. The Scotland, the Hungary, and the Russia game, Nemanja Gudeli was fantastic. Again, in all three games. Uroš Spajić played against Hungary and against the Russia, and that was 2 games too late, in my opinion. And Mladenovic on the left-hand side, good God, why didn't they just, when we lost the left-sided player, why didn't they just, replace a like for like? Russia is a solid team. They did miss a few players, for whatever reason today, but they are more than a solid team, living off the high of being host of the World Cup and the fantastic World Cup that they did have. And yes, they had plenty to play for as well. I saw again this morning Yuri Zhirkov playing, for the national team. That man has been around forever. Like, if I'm not mistaken, didn't he lead the Russians into Berlin in 1945? The man's been around forever. So, it was well taken, just a horrible, hollow feeling. And think about it this way. An average Hungary side topped that group. And who would have thought that when the whole thing started?
Right.
Mm-hmm. What if Uroš Spajić started at center back against Scotland? What if Gude was in midfield? What if Mladenovic started at left wing back? So many what ifs, and we'll never really know. I mean, obviously we see what happens every game. Gude is in midfield. We do a lot better because we win more balls. We have more control in the middle. And, when he's not in midfield, it's not as good. He was really good in defense. Like, he did a great job against, I thought he was pretty solid against Scotland, Hungary, and then, of course, today he wasn't playing in the back, but he was, once again, really solid. So, nothing against him as a player. He's putting a good shift every time he's played, but you just can't help but eat yourself on the inside thinking about, why. Why didn't he just... Uroš Spajić was so capable in these 2 games, and it just doesn't make any sense. Like, why didn't you just play him against Scotland? Like, why experiment? Why go, somewhere left field,
Right.
I don't know. It's just so frustrating. It just hurts to talk about. Alexa, give us your thoughts. Let me stop talking.
Yeah. Gentlemen, we have a big tradition that we usually don't give credit to the people that have done so much for this country. But I think tonight is a moment where we should do that because I maintain that tonight is all down to Novak Djokovic. And why do I say that? Well, considering the fact that he lost to a Russian player tonight, I think that the cosmic balance of the world and however it works, the karma had to be restored. And hence why this performance came out tonight. So a big thank you to the greatest athlete this country's had. Kidding aside, I was rotating between 4 different broadcasts. I was watching the Hungary game. I was watching tennis. I was watching EuroLeague. I mean, I was watching everything. But it's very frustrating. I mean, I don't even know where to start. We just destroyed. We didn't just beat. We pummeled the team that, first of all, we have a terrible record against. I can't remember the last time we beat Russia in anything, in a friendly or a qualifier. 1997. our record in general against the Soviet teams is terrible. Ukraine and even Georgia's frustrated us, and Estonia, and I don't need to get into it.
Kazakhstan, and don't forget Kazakhstan.
Yeah, don't forget Kazakhstan. Yeah, yeah, I wiped that. I wiped that memory out. And Azerbaijan, and I don't need to go any further. And the way we played tonight, that first half was Radomir Antic wouldn't have been ashamed of that. That second goal was Joga Bonito. You could put some Brazilian samba music there, and it would look great. It was just maximum efficiency. It was a game where it was a stupefying game in many ways because Russia, who's known for its efficiency, missed a ton of chances, and we created so many good moves, and the ball was moving so well. I think this game proves that the issue that we definitely have is the fact that when teams play in our formation, we struggle. I'm not even sure if it's a pressing issue because Norway pressed us fairly well, and even Russia came out and pressed us somewhat, and we dealt with it very easily. But when teams set up like we do, Scotland set up a 3 at the back, Hungary set up a 3 at the back, we struggle with it, and that's something that's going to have to be immediately altered. The fact that we at one point came out with 3 strikers, I think that the conservative Serbian footballing public had just an incredible moment of joy of that because I'm sure that everyone's screaming if we have to play like that, even though it's not a system that can probably work, but the formation was on point. I, once again, have to give so much credit to Nemanja Gudic for how he's played in every game because he's done well at center back, he's done well in midfield. I have to just kind of rebut on the points you guys made on the Scotland game. I don't think that the lineup was the issue because if you look at this game tonight, we had more players out of position tonight than in the Scotland game. Gudic going in the center back was something that I would have done as well, considering that Spajic had not played as much for Feyenoord. Sevilla had tried Gudic in that position already. The bigger issue, and also that Sasha Lukic had really good form for Torino, and that you didn't have Milivojevic available, so that made sense. The problem was, why did you have Kostic starting over Mladenovic, who has just become a man alive? It's very reminiscent of when Ivan Obradovic broke through on the Radomir Antic, when you remember that game he had against Austria and in Romania, when he was just like, he looked like Jordi Alba. It was incredible. And tonight, the crosses, the movement. He came into the squad at a time when we were struggling in that position, when Kolarov wasn't playing. He put a very good shift in against Portugal, if you remember, in Lisbon. In the qualifiers, he's really done a very good job. I think he's almost pushed Kostic out of that position completely. The crosses were great. Lukajovic deserves a lot of credit from me because I've been harsh on him. There have been times where, he's not played at all for Real Madrid. Partially it's his fault. Partially I think that it's because of the system he's in. I think sometimes for the national team he hasn't taken things seriously enough. But I think in this particular November period, I don't think anyone can argue with the fact that he was our best player. He scored 3 goals, all of them headers, as the shortest striker that we have. 2 assists, again, headers. Scored in the penalties and moved well without the ball. And showed, I think, a lot of character, even when he's not getting minutes, that he could perform. I'm very happy for Dusan Vlahovic as well because his effort and his aggressiveness and his direct approach warranted him getting a goal. And people might say that Russia didn't take it seriously. Yes, they didn't have Zuba, they didn't have, Cheryshev and a couple other guys calling in, but like you said, they needed to stay in the second pot for World Cup qualifying, even though their situation...
They made 3 subs at half, right, if they weren't taking it seriously. They wouldn't have subbed the whole, change everything, right?
Yeah, they made 4 subs at halftime, and the team they put out, they had Zhirkov, they had Guilherme, they had Miranchuk. They had a team that was more than good enough to win, and I think everyone was great tonight. Radonjic, as much as I criticized him, and as much as sometimes he annoys me with his selfishness and with his general decision-making in his career, he has a burst of acceleration and creativity. Not creativity, but just a burst of pace and just technical ability that very few people have. And if he channeled that, and if he actually focused solely on football, he could be really good. So, and we didn't even have Tadic or Lazovic or SMS tonight. And I'm not saying that, after tonight, people ask the question, should they play? But they're guys that have been great for us in the past. And I think that without them, we are a different team, and they are guys that you would like to have. So it was a fantastic performance, and I think it's a showcase that the issue against Scotland was the approach more so than the tactical wisdom, which is very frustrating. But it is what it is, and now I'm stupefied because I was feeling one way on Tuesday, another way on Friday, and now I'm feeling differently. And it's just crazy. And credit to Hungary for the great performances they had. I think they've done a very good job. They have a couple of excellent players. Salai, Soboslai, others. They have a good coaching staff. They have a good system. So I give them credit and thank them for helping us tonight because without their win, and they made it comfortable, that we wouldn't even be talking about us staying in League B. And ultimately, when you look at how we were feeling after Scotland, the fact that we've stayed in Pot 2 for World Cup qualifying, and the fact we've stayed in League B is I can't say a success, but it's somewhat dampened the terrible feeling that we had, and it shows that maybe there's hope for the future. Now, what we do with the future, we're going to discuss later, but it shows that this team has the capacity to be really good. So I'm extremely happy. I mean, you went 5-0. You can't be disappointed. That's our biggest win.
Yeah, I agree, man. I just hope that this doesn't mask over some of the problems that we had, especially with Scotland. You know, like,
Absolutely.
yeah, that's what I'm scared of, and that the FSS doesn't get criticized like they should, because of this monstrous victory. And another point, I think the best case scenario for today would have been if we would have won like we did, 5-0, but also got relegated to League C. I think that would have been the best scenario. I don't see any reason to stay in League B.
Look who's in League C now. They got Gibraltar's in League C, Faroe Islands, I think Cyprus.
Montenegro's gone up to League B, so maybe.
I don't know what they're doing. They should be trying to get to League D and trying to pull a Macedonia. I don't know what they're doing going to League B. It doesn't make any sense.
Right.
Like this, they're going to get relegated like 1,000,000%. From.
The issue that exists though is the fact that I think that they kind of neutralized the problem of the tanking by saying that the teams that show up from League A and the best, I guess, top teams from League B only get the spots for the World Cup qualifiers. So it's not going to be like the Euros where the winners of all the leagues got in. They're going to be more serious about it. So tanking, whilst it is a good concept on paper, doesn't work here, which is why I did feel it was more important to stay up. And also they've said that they are not going to have League D. They might just shorten it to being League C. They're going to have more C leagues and B leagues and stuff like that. So would the tanking have worked is a question that...
but guys, do we need to revert to that? Do you know what I mean? This has been my argument all along. That, first of all, Europe has now, I think, after massive caution, I think these European national teams have really taken to this European League of Nations. I actually think it's, really taken the meaningless international friendly out, and every one of these games you have something to play for.
Exactly.
I think it's an opportunity for us because we are in pot 2 for the World Cup qualification by sheer luck. We're not there on performances. If you take the Norway game, we've only beaten Luxembourg and Montenegro, Lithuania, and it's
Russia.
And now it's Russia, but it hasn't been pretty reading. So I think that we've got to we've got to get out of our thick heads, our thick box heads. That we've got to take out the mathematical combinations that Albert Einstein's wife used to put out. And we've just got to play football. We showed tonight that we are capable of playing football. And if we get into a situation whereby the silliness of the FA, the Serbian FA, can be eradicated, now that's a really hard ask. But if our players
it's almost impossible ask. It's almost impossible.
Absolutely. And I know that we're going to talk about those things afterwards. But if our players can really put whatever they have aside and play for that shirt, because we can have all those slogans on the sidelines. It doesn't mean anything. You know what I mean? Jedan tim, srcem svim, svi za Srbiju, blah, blah, blah. Where we know that we've got a few players there that are playing for their club futures. Whether they're playing in France, Spain, Italy, we are playing for their futures. They are playing for their futures in terms of, how big their next contract is going to be, or whether they're going to stay there, or whether they're going to stay there or possibly go down to a lower league. And that's some of the frustration that we have. Is there's possibly a situation where they're having that in their back of the mind rather than play for the national team. So I think that this is going to come. It saved us a bit that we are in League B, because I want to play those opposition. I want to play those other countries that are in League B, and if we can put up performances, if we can get a run on, it will only be good for our national team in the future. I don't want to go play against Lithuania. I don't want to go play against Andorra. I don't want to go play against, all those other teams, Belarus. It does us no use. The only thing it does is if we string a few shitty results there, good results there, against shitty opposition rather, it will just make journalists write articles that are just not realistic. You know, I saw. Sorry, buddy, go.
Sorry, I don't know about you, but I'll feel pretty unconfident about a away trip to Belarus.
Absolutely. But, you know,
I'll be terrified.
I was already got into the paper after today's game, and then, you know, they were talking about Erovski Brazil. You know, just get over yourselves, people. You know, like, we know what we're capable of. We've always had the talent. We've always had the players. And we've always had the production line of players coming in the future. It's just whatever we have, whether it's psychology, whether it's mentality, and then obviously the horrible people running the show is our greatest challenge.
Yeah, and I think I would be happier sitting here right now if we played tonight like we did against Scotland, because then at least it would make sense.
Right.
This way, this makes no sense. I mean, it doesn't make any logical sense at all. And it's very frustrating. And let's give us some props as well. Thank you to Hungary. Also, our boy Nemanja Radonjic, who we love to shit on. He's kind of put in two pretty good performances. His directness in the games has been very good, and he's clearly got...
It's great that you brought him up, because this is what I think, like, Nemanja Radonjic is playing for his career at Marseille. He's not a regular at the moment. Hasn't been a regular for a little while. He had a really good run. Was it late last season? Obviously, Villas-Boas coming there maybe revived his career a little bit, but he hasn't been a regular. So that's that thing in the back of his mind. God, if I can do well for the national team, they might keep me. If they do well for the national team, then maybe my next transfer still might be good. And I think there's a lot of players in that position. Luka Jovic is in that position. You know, SMS is in that position.
Mladenovic plays in Poland. He's going to a bigger league for sure after this game.
Ako Bog, da. And that's what we all want to see. But we just need to put that away. If we have naturally a good performance with the national team, all that stuff will take care of itself. Rather than that being the priority, and then whatever happens to the national team thereafter.
Yeah, for sure. You know, it's things we keep battling with, this inconsistency, this Jacqueline Hyde, these never-ending ups and downs that, you know, I don't know if we'll be past it in our lifetime, but hopefully maybe our kids will see the national team consistent once again, because I don't know if we'll be able to see that. And it's a good thing, yeah. I mean, Luka Jovic, of course, his movement, he's always in the box, he's always near the ball. It seems like every time there's a good cross in, he's just going to get there. The guy has a real nose for where the ball is going to be, and that's something that we're really lacking with other players. We saw what Judicic brought to the team by bringing that movement and that pace, and now we're seeing Jovic do the same thing. So we do have something there. Hopefully we can, you know, fully take hold of it and make it grow into something that's you know, there for a lasting period that can help us win some important games. But as of now, you know, the signs are pretty positive, and I think it might be time for Mitro to become our super sub, or same with Tadic, to be honest. If we look at the games, Tadic and SMS Sergej don't seem to really mesh too well together, and we've seen what Sergej can do when he comes on late, and when Tadic isn't on, he's just way more effective. And he's also way more effective with a striker that moves and has pace like Jovic, as compared to Mitrovic, who doesn't really do that, because at his club in Lazio he has you know, mobile players and mobile strikers there as well. So it might be time, in my opinion. I think it's time, you know, we give it a try, because clearly what we've been doing hasn't been working. It's worked to a certain point, it works to a certain level, but it's not enough. So why don't we try this? Let's see what Tadic and Mitrovic can do off the bench. I mean, two guys like that off the bench is pretty good, and pretty good for any team to have that can change the game. And let's give some young players a chance. Let's change it up. Let's shake it up. Let's see what the new guys can do, what the under 20 golden generation can do, and what we can do for the future. Luca, what are your final thoughts on the Nations League and what we can gather from this while we move forward?
Yeah, man, I think you're absolutely right, Milos. I think we have some figuring out to do personnel wise, as in who's going to be the core of this team moving forward, right? And this is nothing against Tadic. I love the man. I think he's a legend for the national team, you know. But the last couple of games have been extremely lackluster by him, almost like his head wasn't in it 100%. And I am all for letting SMS go in that position and he be the anchor of that attack. I think he's obviously shown he can do it. It seems like that his Lazio play is finally translating to the national team, and I don't think we've even seen the best of him for the national team. As far as the strikers go, I'm cool with Mitrovic coming off the bench for a few games just to see what Jovic and perhaps Juricic together can do. And yeah, I would love to move forward in that direction, as well as I would. We haven't even talked about the Kolarov situation yet, man, but we'll get to it. All right, but anyways, him, I think he should be done with the national team as well, and just start getting some new blood in there and some consistency. So we're not relying on people, like Tadic and Kolarov to be there forever, basically. Final wrap up on the Nations League. Obviously, I'm trying to put this nicely, but a disaster would be the right word to describe it. And not even talking about our performances in the qualifying for Europe. Bottom line is, I don't like where we're at as a team right now. I really don't. I think it's a lot of dysfunction as usual, a lot of unknowns, and I just hope that today's big win is not gonna just kind of gloss over some of the dysfunction that we have in the team, and especially when it relates to Tumbakovic's future with the team.
Oh, for sure. Heads have to still roll, of course. Veli, what are your final thoughts on the Nations League and what we need to do going forward?
I just think it's a great opportunity for us. It's a great opportunity to put a set of results together. There's absolutely no doubt that, for instance, it worked in Scotland's favour. Getting a run of results, building some confidence, building some belief. I think it's something that we need to take up in open arms and play football rather than what's going to be more advantageous for us. Do we go into League C, League F, League G, League A, whatever it is? Because I think that the better opposition that we play against more often will only be beneficial to the national team. I'm a little bit different in your opinion about Mitrovic. I think there's been some games, like today was one of them, whereby he didn't score, but he still was fantastic up front.
Agreed.
But I also understand that, we just need to try it for the contingency plan for whatever reason that
we're too predictable.
Can't play. Yeah, exactly right. And if we go back into another pod, when we talked about the Norway game and how happy we were, some of the things that we brought up on the panel was that we went through Mitrovic just a little bit too often. And so I think that's a situation whereby we could use that as an opportunity and say, okay, how can we change it up a little bit? And then it will give opposition national teams something to think about in their preparation against us. But again, if we play highly motivated, efficient, fast-flowing football like we did today, like we did against Norway, we will win more games than we won't. If we play like we did against Scotland, that slow, laborious, overcautious type mentality, we're going to be in real trouble.
We beat Russia and Norway in the same month and lost to Scotland. Yes, that happened.
I'm thankful that I'm in lockdown, because over this last week I could actually lock myself up.
Here, Alexa, what are your final wrap-ups about the Nations League and what we can gather from this bumpy ride and take towards the future?
Well, I would like to, first of all, just kind of correct Veli and give him an explanation on one of the points he made as to why we are in the second part of the qualifiers. I think it's because the fact that FIFA measured how teams did in the previous World Cup and in the previous World Cup qualifiers, and we qualified as a pot 4 team in our group because we were the fourth pot in the Wales, Ireland, Austria group, and considering that we beat Costa Rica and we punched way above our weight. I think that's why we are in the second pot. Is the best that I can gather from some of the things that some of the esteemed journalists and calculators that exist have explained. So that's the explanation as to why we are there, even though it's not a real position, because we should probably be in pot 3. But that's that explanation. From the Nations League, I would say that I think objectively that this is where we are at the moment, and that we are probably the third or second team in this group. And I think even if we had the ideal manager and the ideal setup, it would have been very, very difficult to get out of this group and promote ourselves, because the group was hard. I mean, not to give us an alibi, but you've got a team that's a quarterfinalist of the World Cup. That's a great squad. They're extremely well run. They've got some tremendously talented players that are there or thereabout in terms of quality, and they're much more physically prepared and better as a team. You've got Turkey, who is in a great moment for their football. They've got an experienced great manager who's brought them success in the past. They've got a bunch of super talented guys, and Soyuncu and Cengiz on there and others. And you've got Hungary, who have a couple of excellent players in Salai and Soboslai and Petr Golaci and others. And they don't really have much talent, but they've got guys that are going to work their socks off. They have a good system in place. They brought in a good Italian coach. They're investing in their football. So the group was hard, and it was against teams that we haven't had good scores with. And all the games, except for the Hungary game at home, which we basically threw away because of a terrible approach, were decent performances. The Russia game, we played well.
We should have beaten Turkey both games easily.
We should have beaten Turkey both games easily. We got a stupid red card in the first game, and we hung on very well to a 0-0 draw, and we kept the clean sheet, which is another good thing. We actually kept the clean sheet. You know, that doesn't happen almost ever. In the other Turkey game, we lost solely because of fatigue and because of missed chances. I mean, Vlahovic hit the bar twice, and we had the better chances. Even the Russia games tonight was great. The first Russia game was really good. We just played against a team that, at that point in time, their league was already moving along, and they were all in physically top shape. This was the first game that we played in almost a year. It was a new formation that we tried out against a team that was better than us, and we did pretty well. We missed some chances, and we looked good. So I walk away from this Nations League ultimately satisfied. Obviously, the overall conclusion to everything that went on, and we're going to talk about the manager situation, what the future is, maybe isn't ideal, but I saw some really good things. I saw a level of adaptation and a level of seriousness that we took in most of the games that I thought was fair. We didn't go all in for these games. I think it's fine that we use these games to prepare for the Scotland and the Norway games. Unfortunate that it didn't lead to anything, but I understand why we did it. And I leave this Nations League fairly satisfied, because the goal was not to get relegated, and we didn't get relegated. As far as the team is concerned as to where it should go, if there's one thing that I hope happens, is that the undroppable tag is taken away. And I'm not saying this as a shot to either Dusan Tadic or Mitrovic or SMS. Dusan Tadic is without any question the most talented attacking player that we've had in this century, and has shown great willingness to play for this team. I think the bad performances that he had in these two games have somewhat been caused by a serious tendon injury that he had, and I don't think he's a guy who would ever imitate injuries, because I saw that guy break his nose in Wales, and he was bleeding all over the place, and he played an hour with a bunch of stuff shoved up his nose, and he still played well. So he's not one who would ever fake injuries, or like some other people, Kolarov. But it comes down to choosing what our goal is right now. If our goal is to do something in the next maybe 2 or 4 years, you keep Tadic involved, because he's still captain Ajax. He's still playing at a very high level. He's still someone who at any moment in time can change the game. But if you want to give the keys to someone else, you build a team around Milinkovic-Savic, who I think is probably our most talented player, and you build around him. Other teams have done it. Bale and Wales built around Gareth Bale, and Iceland built around Gylfi Sigurdsson and other players, so we can do it as well. And the good thing is that this current generation, which I wrote in a thread on Twitter, which is very detailed, is going to be there for the next at least 2 cycles, if not more, because you've got none of the players that are going to be there are going to be older. The oldest player in this current setup right now, apart from Tadic, is Filip Kostic, who's 28. You've got, Nastasic is 27, but everyone else is either 25 or less, in terms of their age. Juric is 28, but Milinkovic-Savic is 25. Jovic is 22. Grujic is 24. Lukic is 24. Vlahovic is 20. Ivankovic is 25. You have a lot of experimentation that you can do. And also, one concept that I would like to see used is one of the things that I see usually in our national basketball team, which is obviously the best team that we have, is that a lot of times when we played games in the past and we would win big medals, we didn't always come out with our best starting lineup. We kept some firepower on the bench, and we rotated. There were certain times when some guys would come in on the bench and start, and sometimes when they wouldn't. It would depend on the opponent. I think there's a lot of evenly talented players in this team where I think that if you explain to the guys that have produced so much in the past, like Tadic and Mitrovic, that there's going to be certain games where maybe it's better to go with Jovic and Vlahovic. Maybe it's going to be better if we go with Juricic as the more faster, creative player behind the strikers. You just have to make sure you manage them well, and if you explain to them that they're all going to get minutes, there's going to be a lot of games. You have the Nations League, you have qualifiers, you have a bunch of ways to use players. You have guys that can play multiple positions. We saw that Isic came out tonight and played right wing back very well, and I think he has the capacity to cover that side too. You have guys that can play midfield. Gude did well at left center back, and he's even done well in the more advanced position. So you have a lot of versatility that you can use. And I think there's a lot of potential to make this a very decent team. It's just how you manage it. It's about making a definitive decision in terms of who you build the future around. If you're going for something short term, and if you want to do something big at this World Cup, and if you want to do something in the next couple of years, then you still give the keys to Tadic and specifically Tadic and also Mitrovic. If you want to do something long term, which is, I think, crucial for this period, if we don't have any type of long-term plan, we're screwed, and we're going to talk about that in this next topic. You build around Milinkovic-Savic, you build around the other guys. But I leave this Nations League period ultimately fairly satisfied, considering that it could have gone a lot worse than it did, and that the results, whilst they weren't impressive, are actually not befitting of the performances, because apart from the Hungary game at home, I think all the performances were pretty good. If we had just had more consistency and more efficiency, they would have been a lot better. So I'm ultimately...
But why can't we, instead of building around Mitrovic or SMS or Tadic, why can't we just build around the shirt? Build around the press.
That's an issue. That's an issue that goes above the tactics. It goes above the
deep roots. Why can't we build? That's what I want us to build around. I want us to build around the shirt. You know, I want us to know that we've left everything there every single time that we've come off it. That's what I want to build around. You know what I mean? Like, we can talk about this. We're talking about formations and we're talking about personnel because we thought that it was so glaringly obvious what could have happened in scenario A, B, C. But moving forward, I want to build around the shirt and everything that it stands for.
Well, what did Scotland build around, right? Their team spirit, their desire.
And they are deservedly there for that reason.
That's right. I mean, we have so much depth right now. We have so many good players. It's a shame that they won't be at the Euros. They won't be at a grand stage like that to showcase our nation's talent. But we didn't deserve it, and that's the final say on our qualifying campaign in the Euros and the Nations League. We just didn't deserve to be there, and going forward, hopefully we are better and we can earn a spot there next time around. It just really sucks that we won't be there because it has been such a long time. But if you don't deserve it, it's not meant to be. Now let's talk about the topic we've all been waiting to talk about. The one and only, our captain, Alexander Kolarov. In the Italian media, actually came out yesterday that some of our players, namely Dusan Tadic, were disappointed and felt betrayed that Kolarov didn't play or at least come in for a penalty shootout. And then there's also talks. And then apparently he was going to play, and then before the game, a couple hours before the game, he decided not to play, and then FSS released a statement saying that he shook Conte's hand. The interim manager told him he's not going to play and didn't want to lie to his coach and break a promise and all that. And then Tabakovic said that he was too injured to play anyways, so he couldn't have played no matter what. But, if that's the case, why did he come to Belgrade? Why did he train every game? Why was he on the bench and available for the game? So there's so many stories that aren't adding up. There's so many things that don't make sense. I think this is probably the end of Kolarov in the national team. I think he was going to retire anyways, but now this just cements it for him. And if it's true that he could have played and decided not to play, that's just flat out embarrassing, especially in a game that is for the chance to go to Euros for your country for the first time in 20 years.
Especially Milos.
Inter. He just got to Inter.
Right.
He just signed this summer. Who the fuck cares about Inter? Like, what's going on?
And especially as the captain of your team,
like
dude.
He's 21 years of age and he's playing for his future.
Right. And he's the captain of the team, man.
Yeah. If this is the case, that every single one of those media reports are true, and if he said, I'm not going to play, or if he's promised Conte this, or he refused to come on, or even in the 5 minutes before the penalty shootout, he didn't want to come on, or faked an injury. I'm not saying that. I'm saying if, that will be on his conscience for the rest of his life. Nek mu na dušu. Do you know what I mean? Like, I was absolutely flabbergasted when I saw that. And I might get fired up, but I'm going to try to do it without swearing or without yelling and all that, as hard as that could be. The other thing is, though, if all of those things are true, it again goes back down to our mentality, where we thought we did the hard work against Norway, and Scotland are lesser opponents than the Norwegians were. Again, it goes down to our mentality. So if it's true, neither us four weren't there. If it's true, nek mu na dušu. Let it be on his conscience for the rest of his life.
I mean, Veli, if it is indeed true that he shook Conte's hand and said he's not going to play and he didn't want to lie to his manager, I don't think he's the type of man who's going to have that on his conscience for the rest of his life, that decision. If he actually made that decision himself, then he's not the type of man to have that on his conscience. But that goes deeper to your point about not playing for the jersey, right? We were talking about why don't we make a team around the team spirit, around Serbia as a nation instead of around this player or that player, right? Because if it's true, absolutely. Right? So, yeah, man, it's just extremely disappointing, especially from a player that I really, really enjoyed watching throughout his whole career, man. So, I was as flabbergasted as you were, man.
Guys, this is the part that kills me regularly. I don't give a fuck about me. I'm 43 years of age. I've had a heart attack. I'm fucking damaged goods, right? You know what I mean? Like, who gives a shit about me? I worry about an 11-year-old Marko Nikolic who lives in Vršac, or Tanja Spasojevic who lives in Novi Sad and all that, who look to our sports stars as some type of inspiration and some type of future and some type of, to give themselves some type of ambition to move on with that national team. That's who I care about, the future, the children, the people that move forward. Like, for God's sake, man, I've been doing this for 100 years, and it's like a drug. We go back and we go do it again, and we say to ourselves, why does this hurt so much? It hurts so much because we care. And I fear for the undercurrent of people that are a lot younger than I am, or you three are a lot younger than I am, what it means to the young teenagers, the young boys and girls in Serbia and, in the diaspora all over the world. That's what really gives me the shits. And so if this is all true, it really stinks. Like, let me give you... Oh, well, someone else talk, please, for the love of this podcast.
Veli, I think you have spent more money on the national team than anybody in the world. You traveled from Australia to almost every away game and home game. I don't think anybody in the world can compare to what you put in.
Guess what? It's not about me, right? It might show that I need a lockdown further, a lot more than the 7 days that we've been given. Right, yes, I've been to Moldova, Armenia, Azerbaijan. I've been to all those places, from Ireland to Sweden. I've been everywhere. But it's not about me. But it's about that love that you have for everything else that there is. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's got to do with the double-headed eagle, the crown, the Serbian tradition, the Serbian customs, the Serbian things. Like, it's, I as I said, I live here. But I celebrate Christmas on the 7th of January. like my ears spring up if like a Serbian kid does well in football, but if he does well in the European mathematics competitions. Do you know what I mean? Like, I love it, but it's not about me. I want it to be about them and the influence and the positive vibe that they can give probably around 11 to 12 million people worldwide that love it as just as much as I do. And so it gets down, and it gets down to that fact is, and I don't want to repeat what we said on another podcast, but when journalists blow up how good we are, it's not the case, right? It's not the case. Do you know what I mean? Like the headlines this morning, Europski Brazil, are you people kidding me? We had 5 really well-taken goals. It was fantastic. We played against Norway, and we were fantastic. But that's all we've done in quite a little while now. You know what I mean? We lost against Switzerland in the World Cup, a game that we should have won. We should have been all going to St. Petersburg for the second round match. And, Pomoz Bože, whatever can happen after that. That's what I'm interested in. And, as I said, if Kolarov did that, then good God.
Yeah, and I think people are saying, oh, even if he played, it wouldn't have made a difference. We still would have lost on penalties. It's not about that. It doesn't matter if it would have made a difference or not. It's about the principle that matter.
Not optics. It's about principle.
If he could have played and decided not to play, it doesn't matter about what the result would have been or what would have happened. If anything would have changed, it's just plain embarrassing. It's just a horrible look, and it sets a horrible example for anybody. And it just shows that your priority is not the shirt, and if you play for a national team, your priority should always be the shirt. And I can guarantee you that for Scotland, their players' priority is the shirt. And for Kolarov, it does not appear to be that way. And, some things that happened in the past as well lean towards that being the case as well. And it's just sad that a guy like him was given the captain. He didn't earn the captaincy. He was given I have been a fan of him, and I think people criticize him unjustly a lot of times, but I'll just say that he didn't earn the captaincy. He was given the captaincy because Bane Ivanovic was stripped of the captaincy for no reason. So,
there is a reason. I mean, if you want to get into that, it's a perfect segue into the problems that exist with the shirt. Bane Ivanovic was stripped because the president of the FA, who I will not mention because he's not worthy of mentioning, showed up in one of the practices dressed and ready to play. Bane tells him, what the hell are you doing here? We don't want to make a mockery out of this. Get the hell out. 2 months later, he gets stripped of the captaincy. Kolarov gets given. What's happening with Kolarov? Oh, he's taking pictures with the president and smiling and all that. So it's a very simple thing when it comes to that. It's specifically regarding this situation. What I've heard and what I've gathered is that he sustained his injury against Parma. He was hurt. I have no doubts in my mind that he was injured and that he couldn't play. He did a scan, and they told him that it wasn't good and that he couldn't go and play, but he still wanted to be there because he wanted to support his team because he's the captain. He wanted to play. He told Conte that, listen, I'm in this situation. And Conte says, well, I don't want to risk losing you, and I don't want you to play and whatever. So the way that it was done, I understand of him being there, and that maybe he could have played tonight. Maybe he could have played in the Hungary game, because we're lacking in that position, specifically that left center back position. Just because he wouldn't have played in the Scotland game doesn't mean that he couldn't have played in the later games. You know what I mean? And they could have had him there. The issue that I have is that why does Tomakovic come out and say everyone's fit? I understand that sometimes as a manager you want to fool the opponent and stuff like that. We remember that Jose Mourinho came out and said that Heung-min Son wasn't fit, and then he shows up against Southampton and scores 4 goals. So, I mean, things like that can happen. But if that's the case, why do you have him available on the bench? Why do you have him available for squad selection? Just tell him, listen, he's hurt. He's not going to play today. I want him to be in the Russia game because I want some consistency. I want some longevity. He's not going to play. He's going to be there to support the team. That's it. As far as him not coming on to take a penalty, maybe it's a controversial thing, but we saw that Kostic came on and played injured and looked terrible. If you're hurt and if you can't play, do you force yourself to play? Of course, the macho instinct and the competitive fire in you says you go out there to die for the shirt. But when you look at some of the injured players that have played, maybe it wouldn't have worked. But it's just it's an example of the horrendous mismanagement, the fact that you had so many things that came out against him, that all of a sudden Inter banned him to play, which is ridiculous because they used the example, well, Lukaku also shouldn't have played. Well, he shows up and plays against England and plays the full 90 minutes. But we still haven't figured out. We still don't know what happened with Nemanja Vidic and his injury in 2006. We still don't know what happened with Luka Milivojevic, and well, we know, but we haven't found the full explanation. We still don't know why players have been shoved out. We don't know why Bogdan Ivanovic was dropped for the Macedonian game and wasn't
there. We don't know why Madic retired last month.
Madic retired. We still haven't found an explanation for that. We don't know these ridiculous things. And you look at some of the statements that they make, it's completely insane. And I understand, listen, we could, I give an example. It's a perfect comparison is the Croatian FA. As much as you don't want to listen to that, it's something that needs to be said. I use them as an example because it's a similar mentality, it's a similar approach. Their potential, they're a better team than we are. They're a better footballing nation than we are. At this moment in time, whatever people want to say, it's a fact.
It's fact.
Their potential is not, the discrepancy in potential is not such that they can play in the World Cup final and they're in the first pot of the European Championships and we can't even get out of the group in the World Cup and we can't even make the Euros. They're maximizing their potential because they have issues that we have. They've got corrupt agents too. They've got shady business deals. Their footballing school all goes to Dinamo Zagreb. We know they've had issues. But you don't have situations where you have, for example, the whole concept of the team is shoved down the drain because they want to fit a young playmaker in, which is what we did with Milinkovic Savic. We fire our manager, we fire Muslim, we destroy the entire concept so that Milinkovic Savic can come in and sell himself. They don't do that. They've had 5 great playmakers come from that position. They've had Modric, they've had Rakitic, they've had Kovacic, they've even had guys like Alan Halilovic and Piazza and whoever else. That they don't break their setup. They've had managers that are making questionable decisions, but they don't get sacked instantly. They're given time to build something. They don't have situations like this. You think Dario Serna would have ever, he would have gone to the Shakhtar owners and said, screw you and screw any kind of deal you want. I'm playing, if it means it's the last game I play. You know what I mean? And Kolarov's approach.
Because they have that fanaticism for the shirt.
Yeah, they have the fanaticism, but they also have common sense that exists within their FA. They've got shady people too. They've got people that are trying to push their players into. I
don't want to name names, but I'll give you initials. Zoran Mamic, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, simply wrong. But the thing with Zdravko Mamic is that he understands, for all his issues, that if you let things go their way, and this is a thing that, aside from all the moral dilemmas, because who am I to judge people, I'm fascinated by the stupidity of the people in the FA show, because Zdravko Mamic, he's also not someone that's moral. He's also someone who's messed up a lot of potential futures, and he's messed up a lot of things. But he has never tampered with the setup. I've never watched the Croatian team and felt, well, what's that guy doing there? You know, you watch our team in the past, there's always 2 guys in the lineup where you're like, why the hell is he there? You know that he's there to sell himself, or that he's there to be sold. With Zdravko Mamic, he lets the managers do their job, he lets the players play their way, and you make more money in that sense. And then you can do your shady stuff behind the table. Because let's be honest, if we made the World Cup quarterfinals or the Euro quarterfinals, would any of us really be criticizing the FA for all the shady stuff that happens behind the scenes? We wouldn't. There's stuff that happens in the basketball FA that's shady, and I would know because basketball is the sport that I love more than anything in the world. And we still go to the semifinals and finals, and people don't say anything about it because we just want to see the team play and do well. But somehow it consistently happens with us, and it's their stupidity. If they would allow things to go their way and to be functional and let the manager do his job and let the players that should play do their job, they would make more money and we would be happy. But they just want to use their pettiness and they want to use their style of thinking, which is 30, 40 years old, to influence things, because as a nation, and specifically as a footballing nation, we have not advanced past 1995. And it's doing my head in. And I do want to make this last point. The thing that I felt was the biggest plus of Demakovic's time, if he stays, and we can talk in the next topic if you guys want to, because I don't want this to end, because there's a lot to talk about, whether he should stay or not. The biggest plus was that the non-footballing things that existed in the past, specifically with Kostic, were nullified. There were issues in the start where Jovic wasn't playing, he was injured, and then he wasn't injured. You remember after the Portugal game where he left, he didn't show up against Luxembourg and stuff like that. But you look at the squad right now, I don't see a player that's in the squad that, I wonder what's he doing there. Most of the players that were in the squad were players that were there for footballing reasons. The decisions that were made were footballing decisions. I looked at all his decisions that he made and thought, okay, well, that makes sense. There was no fighting. There was no politics. There wasn't players fighting with the manager because he disrespected them and called them out. There wasn't any fights with journalists. The non-footballing stuff was put to a minimum. But with this, I can't even blame Tabakovic for this. This is just a horrible look, and I think that this is the perfect example as to why there should just be a house cleaning, because we can talk about the long-term things that need to be changed. The fact that the league is not a professional league. The fact that half the teams don't have their stadium. The fact that the national team never plays away from Belgrade. The fact that the political winds essentially decide which team gets more of the beneficial decisions. The fact that the youth schools are destroyed. The fact that the Linglong Liga has more professional players than the Premier League, which is insane. We talk about all those long-term fixes. Yeah, that's a fact. The Premier League has 508 professionals. The Super League has 512. So we can talk about yeah, we can talk about all these issues, but there are certain short-term things where you don't need to be a visionary. You don't need someone who's going to come in like in the German or Spanish FA that's going to project the next 15 years, but you can use common sense and functioning to fix things. And this particular FA came out and said, when they came in and took the roles, that the goal was for this team to qualify for one of the two next major competitions, which they've technically done. But when you look at what they've done, the fact that they destroyed our World Cup campaign, and I will put both my hands and legs in the fire that we had kept Slavic and Muslim, we would have made it out of the group, and I don't give a damn what anybody says to me, and I can back that up at any time. You look at the fact that they wasted a year and a half with Gustave, the fact that we didn't go to this formation earlier, the fact that they've allowed this kind of stuff to happen, the fact that this team, with all this talent, didn't make the Euros is a disgrace, because a lot of times maybe we mismanage and we don't appropriately value the qualities of our players. Some people think that we're a top 6 team. Some people don't think we're a 30 team. This team doesn't have the capacity to do what Croatia did or what England can do or France or Belgium. But this team absolutely has the potential to play in every single tournament. In the Euros, absolutely should play. No disrespect to Finland or Macedonia or any of the teams that qualify, but if they can make it, we damn sure should make it. This team has the potential to make it out of the group, to make it to a quarterfinals, or be a surprise at a World Cup, to show out and to play some really good football, because we've got guys that are playing in France and Italy and Spain and Germany and England. And I don't even think it's an issue of their approach, which a lot of times gets criticized about them not caring for the shirt enough. Yes, there's guys like that can make those kind of mistakes, but you look at some of the examples, Dusan Tadic playing in Wales with a broken nose, Vlahovic and Milenkovic basically smuggling themselves in to play this game, Rajkovic playing the Scotland game with a bruise above his eye, Kostic, who still came out and played with an injury, Mitrovic, who gets the living hell beat out of him every single game. I don't feel like the players don't care enough, but when you look at the kind of things that go on in this FA, why would you care? And there are examples of other countries, and I'm sorry to barge on, but I think it's important when we make comparisons with the top nations, because we always like to downgrade ourselves, and we never like to adequately grade ourselves on other teams. You look at, like, Germany had fights in their World Cup in the Russia camp. France had players that were blackmailing other people with, like, sex teams. England players were sleeping with each other's wives. South American players would come on cocaine and stuff to qualifiers. Like a lot of people give a lot of crap to our players, but they're like saints compared to some of the teams that we see. Even the Croatian situation in the World Cup, I mean, they had Nikola Kalinic, who was being disobedient and unhappy about his playing time, and they let him go. The difference with good FAs and bad FAs is that you don't allow the bad apples to ruin the good apples. You manage situations. You remember with the basketball, again, you had Svetslav Pešić, who removes Zlatan Radmanovic in the semifinals because he's eating a banana. You have Sali Đorđević, who removes Zlatan Mitsov in a meaningless friendly against New Zealand because he throws a towel and he doesn't give a high five to everyone. You don't tolerate things like that if you're trying to build team spirit. But when you look at how badly things are mismanaged, it does my head in. And you don't have to be a football visionary. You just have to use common sense while still being able to do your dirty work. And the fact that they're that stupid and that they're that stubborn is what drives me crazy, because away from the moral aspect, there's a lack of efficiency that can be mutually beneficial. And I know I'm sounding like a bad villain from Austin Powers, but it really is like that, and it just doesn't happen. And a lot of times,
for sure. I hear you, brother. And I think the main point is our FA is a joke. They've done nothing to help the growth of the game. They've done nothing to promote the game. They've done nothing to improve the situation.
They wasted good managers. They wasted players. They've done a lot to ruin the growth of the game, and they should all go. It's a fact. I'm sorry. I'm not honored the fact you made one tournament out of two. The fact you didn't make these Euros is twice as big of a failure as it was a success to make the World Cup.
Hey, but we're closer than ever to qualifying, so they'll use that, I'm sure. All right, guys. I think we're going to wrap it up there. We have a lot more to talk about, but we think the show's over an hour right now, so want to keep something for next week.
We'll leave the manager question for next week, because I think it's a legitimate one to be asked about who shows up.
We got a lot to talk about next week about that, and also want to leave on a positive note. I was watching Scotland against Israel today, the pre-game on Sky Sports, and they actually showed one of Serbian Footy's tweets and talked about it.
Oh, nice.
So that's pretty cool.
You should tweet about politics more than you should tweet about football. You got 50
That's right. Going viral, going worldwide. So at least that's one positive.
Guys, it was a pleasure tonight. Great show. Great show tonight.
Perfect. And yeah, so everybody listen to our show, Serbian Football Show on YouTube and on SoundCloud. And also, of course, follow us on Serbian Footy on Twitter. Trying to get to 20,000. Have a great week and see you next week.